Welcome to Neo and Jiho Part 12. Remember to subscribe and tap the notification bell not to miss any part. Thank you. The house had fallen silent after dinner. Jiho had gently excused himself to finish a few work messages, and Neo had retreated to her room, still trying to process the conversation she had with her sister earlier. The last message from Tumi was still on her mind. There had been something in her voice. Not just guilt, but fear. Neo sat on the edge of the bed, holding her phone. Her fingers hovered above the screen for a moment. She remembered the number Tumi had used to call earlier. It wasn't her usual line, and Neo had saved it quickly, just in case. Now, without hesitating further, she tapped the call icon. The phone rang only once before a man's voice answered. He sounded slightly breathless, as though he had stepped outside or away from something. "Hello?" Neo blinked. This wasn't her sister. "Yes. Hello, I'm sorry to disturb you. This is the number my sister Tumi used to call me. I'm trying to reach her." There was a pause. A sigh. Then the voice softened. "You must be Neo," he said. "Your sister spoke about you." Neo's heart tightened. She stood up slowly, walking toward the window where the curtain fluttered slightly in the night breeze. "Is she okay?" Her voice trembled. The man hesitated again. "She's holding on. But there's something you need to know. The girl she fought with, Kesa, she's in intensive care." The words dropped into the air like stones. Neo clutched the window frame. "No," she whispered. "No, it can't be that bad." "It is," the voice said gently. "She has head trauma. The doctors say surgery is needed, urgently. But her family, they can't afford it. It's not covered. And without it, well, things might get worse very quickly. And for your sister, if that girl dies..." Neo closed her eyes. Her throat burned. "She could face murder charges," he said quietly. "And then there'd be no bail, nothing. The court would move fast." Neo turned around, eyes glistening. Her breath hitched. She didn't realize Jiho had entered the room until she felt his quiet presence beside her. He didn't speak, only placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. She kept her voice steady as she spoke into the phone. "What can I do?" The voice on the line replied without pause. "If you really want to help her, you need to act fast. I can try to speak with the hospital. Maybe they'll accept a down payment. I have a little money. Not much, but enough to convince them to begin the prep." Neo pressed a hand against her forehead, shaking slightly. "Why are you helping her?" she asked. There was silence on the other end. Then slowly the man spoke. "Because years ago I lost someone. My sister. She was innocent, but nobody helped her. She died in custody." Neo broke. The tears she had been holding back began to fall. She sat on the bed, phone pressed against her cheek, her other hand covering her eyes. Jiho sat beside her, wrapping his arms around her shoulders. She leaned into him, her body shaking. "Please," she whispered into the phone. "If you can help, if you can make them begin the surgery, do it. I will send you everything. Just tell me what it costs." "I'll do what I can," he said. She ended the call with trembling fingers. Jiho was still holding her. He didn't ask questions. He simply pulled her closer and let her cry against his shoulder. "We have to go," she said, her voice hoarse. "I can't wait. I need to be there. I need to know Tumi will be okay. That Kesa will live." Jiho pressed a kiss to her hair. "Then we go. We already booked. We fly in a few hours." She looked at him through tears. "Will you be okay with this? Seeing my family? Seeing the mess?" "Your mess is mine," he said simply, "and you don't need to be strong alone." It was only 10 p.m., but the night felt heavy. Their flight was at 3:45 a.m. When everything was ready, Neo changed into comfortable jeans and a soft sweater. Jiho did the same. They tried to rest on the bed for an hour, but neither of them truly slept. Jiho stayed close, holding her hand as she stared at the ceiling. She had stopped crying, but her eyes remained red and distant. At the hospital in Botswana, as the sun crept over the edge of the horizon, the man who had taken the call entered the emergency wing. He spoke quickly with the attending nurse, explaining the urgency. The moment Officer Mugapi stepped into the white-tiled corridors of the hospital, his face was taut with urgency. He walked straight to the reception desk, showing his ID card to the startled nurse behind the counter. "I need to see Dr. Malapo. It's important. Tell him it's about patient Kesa." The nurse hesitated, but recognizing the officer's badge, picked up the internal phone and dialed the extension. A minute later, Dr. Malapo emerged from the far end of the corridor. He was in his late 40s, tall and composed, his white coat slightly wrinkled after a long shift. "Officer Mugapi," the doctor said, surprised. "Is everything all right?" "Doctor, I need a moment, in private. It's urgent and confidential." Dr. Malapo led him to his small office at the back of the surgical wing. It smelled faintly of antiseptic and coffee. Files were neatly stacked on the table, and a computer screen displayed patient logs. Officer Mugapi waited until the door was closed. "It's about the girl, Kesa, the one allegedly beaten by the girl in custody. I want you to personally check her records and her scans. I have reason to believe something isn't right." Dr. Malapo frowned. "But she's already in intensive care, scheduled for operation, head trauma, internal bleeding." "Doctor, please, can you just pull up her file and take a look yourself?" Curious now, Dr. Malapo sat down and began clicking through the hospital system. It took less than a minute to locate Kesa's profile. He clicked open the most recent brain scan. As the images loaded, his frown deepened. "Wait," he murmured, leaning closer. "These scans, they don't show any hemorrhage, no swelling, no bleeding. In fact, this scan is completely clear." Officer Mugapi stepped beside him. "Are you saying she doesn't need surgery?" Dr. Malapo looked at him, clearly disturbed. "Not based on this. This isn't even a scan from yesterday. It's from 5 days ago, before this incident. This doesn't make sense. Who admitted her into ICU for surgery? Can you check the admission logs? Who filed her for emergency surgery?" The doctor clicked into the digital record. A name appeared on the screen. "Nurse Bontel." "Her?" Mugapi asked. "Yes, she's on shift today. Let me call her." Dr. Malapo stood and picked up the intercom, his voice brisk. "Nurse Bontel, please report to my office immediately." 10 minutes passed before the door opened slowly and Nurse Bontel stepped in. "You asked for me, doctor?" Dr. Malapo gestured toward the chair. "Please sit. I have a few questions." She hesitated before sitting, eyes shifting between the doctor and the uniformed officer. "Nurse Bontel," the doctor began, calm but direct. "I reviewed Kesa's file. The scans attached do not support the need for any surgery. There are no signs of trauma, and the scan is not recent. It's an old one." Bontel stiffened. I followed protocol. She was unresponsive and the mother was worried. She insisted on immediate care." "That doesn't answer the question," Officer Mugapi said, voice firm. "Why was she admitted to ICU under false diagnosis?" Bontel faltered. Her fingers clutched the hem of her uniform skirt. Her lips trembled. "It was her mother," she said quietly. "She came crying. She said the girl who beat her daughter had a rich sister in Korea, that maybe this was the way to make them pay. They made it sound like justice, not a scam. I didn't know they'd push it this far." Dr. Malapo's face hardened. "So you sedated the girl to make her seem unconscious?" Bontel nodded slowly. "The IV has mild sedatives. She was never really in danger." Officer Mugapi stood sharply. "This is fraud. Do you realize how close you brought this girl's attacker to being charged with attempted murder?" Bontel's voice cracked. "I was told it would only look like a concussion, that she'd recover and no one would ask. I didn't think the police would get involved this deeply." "Show me the patient," the doctor said. They left the office together, Officer Mugapi walking with clenched fists. In the ICU, Kesa lay still under the fluorescent light, the soft beep of a monitor by her bed. A drip was attached to her wrist, and the nurse on duty was reading a chart. "Disconnect the IV," Dr. Malapo ordered. She's not a surgical patient." The nurse looked surprised but obeyed. The drip was removed, and within 10 minutes, Kesa's eyelashes fluttered. She stirred, groaning softly. "What? Where?" Dr. Malapo leaned closer. "Kesa, can you hear me?" She blinked at him. "Yes, my head hurts, a little." "Do you remember what happened? Do you remember what happened?" She nodded faintly. "The fight, at the party. Then I was dizzy, then I woke up here." Officer Mogapi stepped forward. "Kesa, no surgery is needed. There is no damage to your brain. The scans say so." Her lips parted. "No surgery?" Dr. Malapo gave her a warm, reassuring smile. "You'll be fine. Just rest." Back in his office, Dr. Malapo signed an emergency review order. Nurse Bontel was instructed to remain in the hospital until authorities gave further instructions. Officer Mogapi called for a patrol car. Within the hour, Nurse Bontel was escorted to the police station for formal questioning. As he watched her leave, he shook his head. He had almost let Toomey be framed for a crime that was never truly committed. After Nurse Bontel was taken to the station for questioning and confessed the scam orchestrated with Kesa's mother, Officer Mogapi remained at the hospital with Dr. Malapo. The two men stood in the quiet of the ward, the tension slowly beginning to ease now that the truth had come to light. Dr. Malapo had ordered the immediate removal of the IV line that had been keeping Kesa sedated. Within moments, the medication began to wear off. A nurse gently wiped her forehead as her eyelids fluttered open. She looked confused at first, then frightened. But the doctor's calm voice reassured her. He leaned over, explaining everything slowly, making sure she understood she was safe and not injured. Officer Mogapi stood near the doorway, watching with a quiet mix of relief and concern. Kesa's awakening confirmed what the scan had shown: no trauma, no internal bleeding, no reason for surgery. She had been a pawn in something cruel, but thankfully she was going to be fine. Stepping out into the corridor, Officer Mogapi pulled out his phone. The screen glowed in the dim hospital light. He opened Neo Molefe's message thread and typed slowly. "Call me back when you see this message. Everything is going to be okay. Officer Mogapi." He stared at the message for a moment before hitting send. She and Jiho were still somewhere in the sky, en route to Botswana, unreachable until they landed. With the message sent, he placed the phone back in his jacket pocket. His expression was serious but calm. There was still work to do. Now that the truth had come out, Toomey's case would need to be reassessed, and he intended to make sure justice followed quickly. He turned and walked toward the hospital exit. The sun was starting to rise over Gaborone. Meanwhile, back in Korea, Yura arrived early at the office. It was still quiet. Most of the staff hadn't shown up, and the hallway lights had just flickered on. Her heels clicked softly on the polished floor as she made her way toward Mr. Choi's private corner. His door was slightly ajar. That was all the chance she needed. She stepped in without hesitation. The office was dimly lit with only the glow of a computer screen in sleep mode. Yura moved quickly, her movements sharp and practiced. Her eyes darted toward the corner desk where Kang Jiho's secretary usually sat. Empty. Good. Sliding into the chair, she shook the mouse to wake the screen. Password? She smirked. Of course, she knew it. She had been around long enough to learn the simple code Jiho had never changed. It took only seconds to log in. She opened the most recent files and logs. It didn't take long. Kang Jiho, travel authorization, Botswana, travel companion, Neo Molefe. Duration, pending, return flight, TBD. Yura's lips tightened. Botswana. So he really left the country, and with her. She shut the file immediately and leaned back in the chair, arms crossed, eyes narrowing. That explained the meeting delays, the sudden delegation to Insu, the silence from the house. Neo Molefe, that name again. But now it all made sense. The upgraded security, the maids dismissed, the canceled calendar, he was making room for her. Yura's throat burned with bitterness. It wasn't that Neo was more beautiful, or smarter, or more polished. But Jiho looked at her like she mattered. like she was the only thing in his world, and that was what tore Yura apart. She rose from the chair quickly, logging out and straightening the desk to appear untouched. As she turned to leave, her mind was already racing. They had gone to Botswana. She didn't know why, she didn't know how long, but it gave her time. Time to think, and time to strike. She slipped out of the office silently, blending into the early stirrings of the company as the staff began to arrive. No one suspected a thing, but Yura had found what she came for.